Hey everyone, Tamara here. Thanks for joining Book Chat Live. Today I am chatting with Deborah Blake, the author of Paranormal series Baba Yaga and the new paranormal romance titled Dangerously Charming. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notifications because I have more awesome authors coming to interview here on Shelf Addiction, and I know you don't want to miss it. Without further ado, hey Deborah, welcome. Thanks for taking the time to talk with me today. How are you? Uh-oh, technical difficulties. Hang on a second. Are
Are
you
we
there?
okay now?
Yes, we're good.
Yeah, I hit the wrong button.
Oh, it's
I'm
okay,
an
no
author,
worries.
not a techie.
Well, your specialty is writing, so that's what counts.
Yeah, I can apparently use a laptop to write books. I can't use it to communicate with the outside world.
Oh no. Well, you're communicating with the outside world right now. So,
Hello,
how are
outside
you doing
world.
today? Yes. How are you doing today? Everything good in your neck of the woods?
Yeah, everything's fine. It's a little gray outside, but that's okay.
It's fall. I love fall. Do you love
It's
fall?
yep, the leaves are starting to change here, which is great. It's cooling down a little bit. I was actually out in the garden yesterday pulling stuff out and harvesting tomatoes and things.
Oh, cool. Fancy. I'm not that good. I mean, I think I would kill anything I tried to grow, but I don't
I
know.
have a huge garden. I just don't have the time to get to it.
Oh, very cool. Well, let's just jump right on in, shall we? So I know that you writers read as much as us readers do. So go ahead and share with us what you're reading right now.
Okay. Lisa Sharon's new book. Well, her yeah, I guess she's got one coming out after this really soon, so I'm catching up to so I'm on time. It's called The Brimstone Deception, and it's her new. Uh, I guess it's the SPI Files series. I love everything she's ever written. So basically, if a book comes out and it has her name on it, it ends up on my shelves.
Oh, very cool. So obviously she's one of your favorites. Do you have any other favorites?
Oh, how many? We don't have that long. I
Top five.
love,
Top
I
five.
love Jim Butcher.
Yeah.
The Dresden Files. I love Kim Harrison. The Rachel Morgan books. Um, the my that's C.E. Murphy. I also like romantic comedy kind of things. Jennifer Crusoe is one of my favorites. There's a British author named Katie Ford with two F's, so I always call her Katie Ford. Um, Jim C. Hines, Alex Bledsoe. Yeah, I read fairly widely. A lot of paranormal romance, a lot of urban fantasy, but also some contemporary romance. Susan Wiggs, she's really fabulous. Um, just not horror because it scares me.
Oh no, no horror for you, huh? Okay.
Yeah, I live alone out in the country. Not
Okay.
a good idea to read horror.
I can see how that might put ideas in your head when it's quiet and it's
Would
dark.
not be good.
Yeah, no. So, with all that said, do you think any of those authors or maybe some different authors might have influenced your writing style?
Um, Definitely. The books that I'm writing, the Baba Yaga series. I mean, I've written some other ones, but um, those were probably influenced to some extent by Kim Harrison. Certainly, Jim Butcher. I love the way he injects some humor in with his ass kicking.
Hmm.
And there's Tamara Pierce, who's a young adult fantasy author, but she has these great strong female characters, and that was one of the things that I wanted to do, was have these strong female characters, which the Baba Yagas definitely are, although some of them are stronger than others.
Hmm. Very cool. So, what made you want to start writing paranormal romance and urban fantasy?
I actually have been writing fiction since about sixth grade. I think I wrote my first novel in the back of a class where I was supposed to be doing something else. The first things I got published are nonfiction books on modern witchcraft for Llewellyn because I'm a witch.
Hmm.
So when I started writing paranormal romance, I liked the idea of taking, witches and putting them in books and doing some fun things with them. Also, that's what I like to read. I mean, I love to read paranormal romance and urban fantasy,
Yeah.
and I think you do like to write what you like to read.
Oh, that's cool. That's like my both of those are really my favorite genres. I'm really addicted to I like paranormal romance that's a little bit has a little bit of bite to it. So
Hmm.
so it's very cool. Awesome. So let's talk about your Baba Yaga series a little bit. It's gotten great reviews. People really enjoy it. I'm sure you have a fan base for that series.
Apparently, I do. It's a little odd. I actually was at a convention this last weekend with Alex Bledsoe, who's a friend of mine, and we were talking about how weird it was to have fans because to us we're just like regular old people.
Mhm.
But yeah, this is the first book, Wickedly Dangerous. That was the Baba Yagas. There's three so far in the series, and they basically all have the same job, which is to protect the environment and to keep the balance in the world. And if they absolutely can't avoid it, to help worthy seekers. Yeah, the Baba Yaga in that first book, Wickedly Dangerous, Barbara, she really would prefer to avoid human beings altogether if she could do it. But of course, there wouldn't be much of a book then.
Yeah.
So yeah, and they have Chudo Yudo is a dragon that came from the original Russian fairy tale about the Baba Yagas. I didn't actually make up the Baba Yagas. I just updated them a lot.
Okay.
Um, yeah, the original Russian fairy tale, the Baba Yaga, and sometimes in the fairy tales they actually did have more than one. So it was cool when I saw that. They lived in wooden huts in the woods, and the huts were on chicken legs, so they would walk around. So they could be anywhere in the forest, and they were associated with these dragons called Chudo Yudo. And I figured, well, these days you would notice a walking chicken hut and you would notice a dragon. So my Baba Yagas all have some form of movable transportation, which is really their hut, which has changed itself to fit into modern society. So, for instance, Barbara's is a magical Airstream trailer, and
Yeah,
her yes,
that's
and
awesome.
her Chudo Yudo is a disguised as a giant white pit bull.
Mm.
That's really a dragon. You just can't tell. And so each of the Baba Yagas has their own home and their own dragon, and then there's these companions, the riders, who help them out with things, who end up having their own books, and that's where Dangerously Charming comes in. That's the first of the rider books. Isn't he pretty?
It's pretty.
Yeah, people asked me if I got to meet the model, and I went, no, sorry, that is not a perk I get, alas.
Oh, well, maybe one day a couple of people have met their model,
Yeah,
so
I
maybe.
I will keep my fingers crossed. Yeah,
Awesome.
they did a great job. I'm published by Berkeley, and I just love all my covers. I thought they did such a terrific job. I will say this one might be my favorite.
Yeah, it is a
Although,
nice cover. I
yeah,
love good cover art, so that's always a good thing.
well, they say don't judge a book by its cover, and you don't. On the other hand, you pick up a book based on its cover. That's the
Yep.
first thing that tends to grab you, unless you're looking on Amazon and just going by descriptions. So yeah, it's a nice thing when you're an author and your covers are happy.
Yeah, absolutely. So with the Baba Yaga series, so each one has her own book essentially. And
Right.
okay.
They're connected. They do go in order, although you can read them on their own if you want to. By the time you get to the third one, which is Wickedly Powerful, then there's sort of a storyline established, and it's a little bit easier to read the first ones because there's characters who have shown up before. I do try and write each one of them so that you can pick it up without having picked up any of the other ones and still have a pretty good idea of what's going on.
Hmm.
But yeah, so each of them has her own story and her own happily ever after, which was one of the things I liked about writing, even though it was a series, writing a different character in each book. Because in urban fantasy, a lot of times what you get is you'll get a series, and they have sometimes the same love interest and sometimes a different one, but it goes up and down and up and down, and maybe you get a happily ever after, maybe you don't get it till
Yeah.
the very end of the series. And I kind of like the happily ever after. I like it when the couple gets to get together and everything's wonderful, because let's face it, real life isn't like that a lot.
Oh,
So
I
that's
know. That's why we read romance, right? Because
exactly. So
real
do we?
relationships suck. So,
What's a relationship? I have cats. So, so yeah, so for me, that was one of the fun things about being able to write these books that were in a series, so that people could, get to know the people in this series and like them, and yeah, hopefully get hooked on the series, but also that each book has its own happy ending.
that's nice. So when you kind of slide into your new series that's a spinoff, um, Dangerously Charming. Do we already know the characters in this
Yes,
book?
actually, there are three writers, just as there are three Baba Yagas, and with any luck, we're going to have three writer books. I've contracted for two. Everybody buy this one, so they'll go for number three. But yeah, you actually meet the writers in the Baba Yaga books as sort of secondary characters. And in fact, when I was talking to my Berkeley editor about the next Baba Yaga book, what was next in the series, she said, "I'd really like you to do a spin-off with the writers." And I said, "Oh, I don't know about that. Do you think people will really want to know about the writers?" And the response from my readers has been so great. Apparently, there was enough of them in the first books that people were intrigued about them, and they really did want to learn more. So that's turned out to be pretty exciting.
Very cool. So obviously this is paranormal romance as well.
Right.
So obviously there's always the heat level. So tell us on a scale of 1 to 10, like 1 being Christian fiction and 10 being erotica. So where
All
does
right,
this
yeah,
fall?
and I am definitely not on the erotica level
Okay.
because, well, I don't remember how all those things work that well. And I would just be blushing while I was writing my own books. Mine are pretty mild. There are always a couple of love scenes, and I would say they're specific enough that you wouldn't want to necessarily hand it to a 14-year-old, although I'm pretty sure the 14-year-olds mostly know more than I do. Um, but they're also not very spicy. Not a lot of specific body parts mentioned, more sort of the flow of things. And like I said, just a couple of those scenes. These are not the books you want to get if you want the sex scenes more than you want the storyline. Let's put it
Okay.
that way. So
Okay.
I'd say medium to mild. It is sort of interesting. I you know I try not to read my reviews, but sometimes you do. And
Hmm.
I get some people complaining that they're not spicy enough. And then, of course, you get the occasional person who complains, well, why is there sex scenes in there at all? And I'm thinking, it's a romance. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Honestly,
don't
when
know how
anything
your
is
romances
labeled,
work.
look, when anything is labeled adult romance, especially paranormal romance, I expect something. You should expect something.
Exactly. A little something, something.
Yeah. So with the characters here, our leading man and lady, is this like an insta love situation or insta lust
Absolutely
situation?
not.
Okay.
No, they actually are sort of thrown together, and neither of them particularly wants to be involved with the other one. They're both a little broken. He especially is very broken. In fact, it's called the Broken Rider series because something happened at the end of the third Baba Yaga book to these poor guys, and they're a mess.
Mm,
And so each of their stories is sort of how they take this mess they start out, how they go from being broken to healing themselves and their journey and the changes that they make. And of course, the women that show up are part of that. But yeah, they've both had a rough time, and neither of them is particularly interested in trusting somebody else or relying on somebody else. So it takes them a while to get to the point. I mean, they have attraction. They definitely both find each other attractive,
Yep.
but they're too busy hiding behind their shells to let anything happen for a while.
Okay. So the main character in this book is Mikhail, right?
Right.
So how does his love interest play into the whole thing? Like, not to be spoilery or anything, but is she a Baba Yaga or is she something
No,
else?
she is a regular person of just
Mm.
like you or me, except for the small matter of a family fairy curse.
Mm.
So she's just like one of us, except that many decades ago, a fairy cursed her family, and so she's having to deal with this fairy curse, which is threatening her unborn child.
Wow.
And so she's not there is nothing paranormal about her except the situation that she finds herself in. Now him, there's some paranormal things. He's not magical like the Baba Yagas who are witches, but he has some special qualities. He's also been around for about 1,000 years. The writers were immortal, can't tell you anymore,
Okay.
but he's not immortal anymore, but he does have some interesting gifts that are starting to show up in which he doesn't really understand.
Nice. So I always like strong leading females. I like the leading lady to be strong and outspoken, even a little smart or, witty or
Oh,
sarcastic.
you are going to have to read the first Baba Yaga book then, because she is a real wise ass. And let's put it this way, she wears black motorcycle boots and she's not afraid to use them. But
Oh, wow.
But Jenna is tough in her own way too. She has been dealing with this difficult situation and she's not looking for help. She's planning to solve her problem herself. She happens to stumble across somebody who can help her and she needs help. Not real good at taking it. But yeah, she's pretty tough too. Although I do kind of have a confession to make. She didn't start out being tough enough.
Really?
When I first started writing this book, I had a hard time switching from the Baba Yagas to the writers. It was a whole different mindset. I mean, it was the same world, which is basically our world, and the same magical things. But when I started writing the book, something wasn't going right. I got about 36,000 words in, which is more than a third of the way through the book, and I could tell there was a problem. I write outlines when that's part of my process.
Hmm.
And I could only get about a third of the way through the outline, even though I knew some basic things that were happening later. And I thought, okay, something's wrong here. So I sent what I had to my agent, Elaine Spencer, who's wonderful, from the Night Agency, and to my editor, my then editor, Lise at Berkeley. And I said, okay, something's wrong with this. I can't tell what it is. Help! I know there's a problem. And my agent wrote back a very nice email with some, fairly good suggestions. And my editor wrote back a very blunt email that said, the problem is she's a Mary Sue. You wrote
Oh,
a Mary Sue, which is the worst thing ever. And I mean, this is not my first book. A Mary
yeah.
Sue, for people who don't know, is basically this wimpy character who can't do anything for herself and just stands around and waits to be rescued. Kiss
Mm.
of death.
Hmm.
So I looked at the character, and what my editor had said was she knew she was going to have to deal with this curse. She did nothing to prepare for it for her whole life. She runs off into the woods completely unprepared. And I went, oh, this is horrible, but that explains why the story's not working. And I had to, I sat down to look at where I went wrong, and it was at about 8,000 words. So I had
Ouch.
to, yes, I had to either rewrite. Thankfully, I could rewrite a lot of it. Some of it just got tossed. And some of it I just had to go back and explain why she knew things and give her better, and now she's fine. Now she's great. But yeah, it was probably the toughest book I have ever written, because I just went horribly, horribly wrong with
Mhm.
one of the main characters, and it took me a while to figure it out. It took me. I usually write a book in about 4 months, the first draft. This one took me 8.
Wow.
It was, yeah. Well, and there was some life stuff in there.
Yeah.
My stepdaughter's mom had a heart attack, and we spent 3 weeks sitting in the ICU, and I got no writing done, so I lost like a month there. But yeah, the book tried to kill me.
Wow. Well, you know what? It's a good thing that you caught that something was wrong early, because that could have been a whole book you had to
Oh, it
rewrite.
could have been worse, because eventually my editor would have come back and said this is not good. But then instead of having to throw out, 25,000 words, I would have had to redo the whole book. And I really couldn't get beyond that place where I was stuck. So, yeah, that is one good thing about being an experienced author, is you don't always know what's wrong, but you can almost always figure out when there is something in the book that is just not working.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about like behind the scenes with this book. Like how is it written? Do we get like alternating point of views?
Yeah,
Is it
in all of these books, in the Baba Yaga books, in this book, you've got the two main protagonist points of view, the female and the male. Um, and then there are a couple of other points of view. There's usually a couple of antagonists, the bad guys, and you sometimes get a glimpse, from their point of view. They're not a big chunk of the book as far as point of view, but I always sort of like to give you a little bit of a look from the inside of the evil, because nobody is the bad person in their own story. And I like
right?
to get, the give a glimpse of where these folks are coming from, what motivates them, so that you can understand why they're being so mean.
Yeah, I mean that always helps. Not that we necessarily want to feel bad for the villain, but I guess just
Oh,
to
and
get
you
us an
don't, believe me,
understanding.
you hate these people. You don't like them at all. But at
And
least
I
you.
like a good villain. I do.
Oh, me too. Good villains are fun to write. Yeah, the nastier the better in some ways. Although no, not cringy, horrible horror nasty. But yeah, my villains are pretty villainous. You wouldn't want to sit down and have tea with them. But I do like getting a glimpse inside their heads, so you can see why they're doing what they're doing. You're not going to approve of it,
Right,
and you may look at their motivation and go, well, that's wackadoodle,
right.
but that's why they're a villain. They're wackadoodle.
Yeah, exactly. So is there an audiobook being released with this title on Tuesday as well?
Unfortunately not. They had audiobooks for the first two Baba Yagas, and they were great, but the sales numbers weren't as good as they wanted them to be, so they haven't done one for the third Baba, and they're not planning on doing one for this, unless all of a sudden the sales numbers for the first two pick up. So
Hmm.
if you like audiobooks, go get those. I mean, they
Yeah.
really were cool. I listened to some of it, and the person doing the voice was great.
Mm.
So at this point, they're out in mass market paperback, and then they're out, of course, in Kindle Nook and all of those other groovy things. But sadly, no audiobook unless you want to pay me a lot of money to just call you on the phone and read it out loud.
That's too bad. I love a good audiobook as well. I do love reading, as you can see, but a good
Right.
audiobook I enjoy also.
Well, and they're nice. I don't tend to listen to audiobooks, but I know people who have long drives and listen to them there, or listen while they're exercising, or
Yeah.
have vision issues, and it's a lot easier to have an audiobook. So yeah, I really think it's a pity, but shockingly enough, authors have very little control over those issues.
Yeah, I've heard that before. Oh, well, let's talk a little bit about what you love or like most about the characters that you've developed for this title.
Um, well, okay, first of all, Mikhail really is dangerously charming. He is just, even now when he's broken and he doesn't want to be charming, when he's grumpy, he's still adorable. I mean, he's not trying to be adorable, he's just grumpy, but nonetheless, I find him amusing. Um, and I love the fact that Jenna is willing to do anything to protect her baby. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I think that's a very real kind of thing. And the thing about Mikhail is he's, you know, started off at the beginning of the book saying the one thing he never ever wants to do again is rescue a damsel in distress that got him into trouble in the last thing. And he is absolutely positively determined not to help. And
Mm-hmm.
yet it is so much an intrinsic part of who he is to be the guy who rides to the rescue, that of course in the end he does, because he can't not. And I
Right.
like that about him too. I like the fact that he, even though he really, really, really doesn't want to be involved, when push comes to shove and this woman gets in trouble or anybody gets into trouble, he's running towards, he's not running away.
Yeah.
He may
Cool.
be
I like
cursing
that.
himself, but he's doing it.
So he's like alpha, but not over the top alpha.
Yeah, I don't tend to write over the top alphas because I don't like men who are like, look how tough I am, I'm wonderful. They're alpha. I mean, they're definitely alpha. You know, the the writers are all really alpha, especially. I hope I get to write the third book because Alexei, that one, he's all right. He's probably the most alpha of all of mine. He's just this big hulking guy,
Mm-hmm.
but they're all, you know, they're all kind of big guys. They're all very strong. They're all, you know, well, like the male love interest for Barbara in Wickedly Dangerous. He's a sheriff of a
Mm-hmm.
small town, but he's still a sheriff. He's, you know, strong in that way. And um, the one in Wickedly Wonderful, which is the middle book, he's a former Marine and a fisherman. Um, Also kind of crabby. I do write a lot of crabby characters. I suspect that's my own personality coming out. I don't know.
Well, as long as it
But
translates straight to paper, right?
yeah. But and then the male protagonist in Wickedly Wonderful is a former Hot Shots firefighter. So now he's a fire tower watcher, but he was, you know, one of those guys who went out and fought fires. And so they're all pretty alpha. They're just not, they're not the kind of alpha that, you know, would push themselves on a woman who didn't want it. Let's put it that
Right.
way.
Oh, that's not attractive.
No, not at all. You know,
No.
I don't, that's where I have a hard time with some of the paranormal romance and urban fantasy where you've got the, you know, the alpha guys are so alpha, they're almost overwhelming. And you know, I don't like those ones. I don't like the ones that, you know, are basically, you are my woman. It's like,
Yeah.
no, I'll make up my own mind, thank you very much.
Yeah. See, that's why I like strong women too. Get out of here with
Yep,
that.
exactly. Well, they should be equals. I mean,
Yeah.
that's my thing. I don't like books where the woman is like, oh, thank you so much, save me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, tell us a little bit about what you're working on now. What do we have looking forward to, after we all read Dangerously Charming? What's next?
Okay, well, I have finished Dangerously Divine, which is the second book in the Rider series. I still have to do revisions on it, and it won't be out until November of next year. So you're going to have a while to wait for that one.
Hmm.
I have another series, which is urban fantasy, and the first book in that is Veiled Magic. That's a little bit more of a, you know, the urban fantasy instead of paranormal romance. It's set in a world mostly like ours, a tiny little bit different, a little bit in the future, but much more paranormal. She's a witch too, main character Donata. And the second book in that one, it will be out in the spring sometime. And there's going to be another Baba Yaga novella, which will be out sometime between those two. I'm not sure. That's probably the next thing I'm going to be working on. And then I'm contracted for a third Veiled Magic book, so I'll be writing that too. Still waiting to find out whether there'll be another Baba Yaga book or the third writer book. You know, real world, it probably
Yeah.
depends on the numbers for this book,
Yeah.
but I'm saying it's looking pretty good.
Yeah, you're going to be busy.
I'm well, and I just finished writing another nonfiction book for Llewellyn, which is a 365-day kind of book, and I have to write a book of cat magic for them.
Oh,
And I have a tarot deck coming out in January, which is going to be really cool.
like did you make the drawings yourself?
No, God, no, nobody wants that. They would have been little stick figures. No, I wrote the book that goes with it, and I came up with the concept, and I worked with this fabulous illustrator named Elizabeth Alba. So I would say, send her, the instructions for what the picture should look like, and she would send it back to me. It's fabulous project, and I am really excited about it. I mean,
Very
having your own
cool.
tarot deck, how cool is that?
That is really cool. Seriously.
See how cool I am? You had no idea.
So there are always writers in the audience, and they always like look for advice from established, and published writers. So do you have any advice for the newbies on the block?
I do. I too was a newbie not all that long ago. And one of the things that helped me the most was other writers. One of the things that some of the advice I was given was to follow, on Facebook and Twitter and blogs and whatever, the authors that wrote in the genres that you liked, or in a style that you liked, even if it wasn't your genre, and you know, track them down all over, watch what they were doing, interact with them. And some of those folks ended up actually being really good friends of mine. And I did end up with a couple of mentors, Mindy Klasky, who's a paranormal romance author, Candace Havens, Alex Bledsoe, a few of these folks really, really helped me. They gave me advice. They, when I started looking for agents, they, told me what the best ways to look were. And do your research. If you are at the point where you're ready to get an agent, by all means, find out who's in reps your field and whether they're accepting people. I've actually gotten, I kid you not, 4 emails in the last 2 months from people who are interested in either the night agency in general or my agent, asking me questions, which is exactly the right thing to do. And not everybody has the time to answer those questions. So sometimes you're going to get people saying, sorry, I can't. I
Right.
always try and take the time to answer questions, not just from my readers, but also from people who are starting out writing, because people did that for me. So
Hmm.
that's, yeah, I mean, make connections with other prospective writers. I joined RWA, which was really helpful, because one of the things I did is when I had my first book, Whichever Way You Can, which is actually out now as an ebook, I entered a lot of contests. I took a year and entered contests and got a lot of really good feedback that helped me, make the writing better. And then I, survived the 67 rejections.
Oh,
And so my other advice is, don't take rejections personally.
yeah.
It's tough out there. If you get rejections that actually give you productive advice, by all means, pay
Listen.
attention to it.
Yeah.
But not everybody's gonna like you or find you suitable. It took me my 3rd novel to get my agent, my 7th novel to get published.
Wow.
We sent out 4 books. The 4th one was The Charm. So don't give up. That's my big advice. Don't give up.
That's great advice. So we are here mostly because we are both going to be at Coastal Magic in
I can't
February.
wait.
Yes. Are you excited for that?
I am. Last year was my first time of going, and I'm friends with Lucienne Diver, who lives out in Florida and goes every year. And she kept telling me how great it was. I had a friend, Nancy Holzner, who had gone the year before. And everybody who I knew who had gone to this said, this is a smaller, more intimate, more relaxed convention. And I usually go to these bigger ones like the Romance Writers of America National Convention, which is lovely, but a zoo.
Hmm.
And it's very reader intensive and blogger intensive, so that there's something like one writer for every 4 to 6 readers or something. I mean, you're never going to get a better chance to mix and mingle. And I met a lot of great writers that I hadn't met before that, and just generally had a blast. Plus, of course, Florida in February when you live in upstate New York, kind of a nice option.
Yes,
So
I understand being in Michigan. Yes, I told and we're gonna be on
exactly.
the beach. Yes.
Although I should warn you, it rained last year and it was cold, and it apparently has been like that every year they've done it. But this year's we're gonna break the curse.
You know what's different? I'll be there, so the sun
See,
will come for me.
that will it, yeah. And the hotel is right on the beach, which
Yeah.
I love the ocean. So even I don't care if it's 50 degrees out and raining, I'm still gonna go sit by the ocean.
Yeah, me too. Bundle up, have my little coffee or whatever, and look at the ocean.
Exactly. But yeah,
Awesome.
it was a lot of fun, and it really is very mellow and relaxed for a convention. So, I mean, we had lunch and people sat at tables with writers and just chatted. I've never been to a convention like that before. It's very cool.
I like it. I love that. Up and close and personal with the authors, and you get to meet all kinds of people that way. So it's always a good thing.
Definitely.
Yeah. Okay, so let's jump into the lightning round. Are you ready?
Oh, okay.
Okay, so real quick, the rules. I have 60 questions, 60 seconds. Don't worry, no one ever gets that far. The only catch is that you must answer A or B on those questions where you have to pick. You can't say both. You can't say
Okay.
neither. You gotta pick.
Alrighty.
All right. So I have my little timer here so that I won't go over. Are you ready?
I guess so.
Okay, let's do it. Physical books or ebooks?
Physical.
Hero or villain?
Hero.
Tea or coffee?
Coffee.
Name a book that you've read in one sitting.
Uh, uh,
Pass.
pass.
Beer or wine?
Wine.
Milk chocolate or dark chocolate?
Dark chocolate.
Vampires or werewolves?
Vampires.
What's your favorite place to read?
On my couch.
Dogs or cats?
Cats.
Cake or pie?
Cake.
Early bird or night owl?
Early bird.
What's your favorite book from when you were a child?
Um, Dr. Seuss. Horton Hears a Who.
All right. Android or Apple?
Android.
Yay! Marvel or DC?
Marvel.
Yes! Oh my gosh! Okay, we're done. But
I
yes,
have all the right answers. Yay!
I love those last couple answers. I'm so happy you didn't say Apple. Oh, no.
No, I
Poo-poo on the
different
devices.
Android things, so we're good.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you for doing that. That was really fun. I always love to get a little glimpse at, what kind of answers, are up in your head when you're on the spot. So that's cool.
Yeah, there's not much up in my head. Trying to get fast answers out of me is like, wait,
Well, before we sign off, is there anything that you'd like to share before we end the interview today?
I'm just very happy to be here. Obviously, I hope people will check out the books, the Baba Yaga series, and of course my adorable, dangerously charming, which is out on Tuesday. Tuesday. Oh my God.
Yes.
Oh, and I should also say, because the book is out on Tuesday, I am doing all sorts of promotional stuff. I've got a giveaway going over on my blog. I am actually giving away a Fire tablet, along with some other things. And I'm doing a whole bunch of flash giveaways on Facebook. I'm really easy to find. DeborahBlakeAuthor.com, Deborah Blake on Facebook, Deborah Blake on Twitter. So yeah, I'm doing all sorts of fun giveaway stuff over the next couple of days to help get the word out about the book. And if you go to my website or my blog, you can also sign up for my newsletter so you can be the first one to know when all the cool stuff is going on.
Awesome. So you guys, the links to all of those ways to find Deborah are below. So go ahead and follow her all over the place. You want in on that? Also, the link to her book is below, so go ahead and pre-order that on Kindle. You know you want to, or
You know you
pre-order it.
want to. You know,
Yes.
hey, my cat's got to eat, people.
And so that's it. So we're done for today. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. And be sure, like I said, to check Deborah out. She is very cool, and I bet her books are even better. So until next time, we will see you, and happy reading. Bye,
Happy
guys.
reading. Thanks.